Hi boys and girls, and welcome to Conway ArtsFest. I'm Dr. Trina Harlow from the University of Central Arkansas, where I help teach the art education program. What that means is anyone who wants to go to college to learn how to be an art teacher takes my classes. And I am so excited to be a part of Conway ArtsFest because you see, it's my first year to be in Conway. I moved here this summer and I just started a brand new job at the university where I'm teaching future art teachers. And so today I'm going to show you how to make a bird. Not just any bird. I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful red yarn wrapped cardinal. A bright red cardinal, those beautiful red birds that we see in trees sometimes. The male cardinal is the bright red, beautiful color. And so today, that's the art project we're going to make. First, let's talk about the supplies you're going to need for this project. First, you're going to need a scrap of an old cardboard box. You could also use some white poster board or something like that, or some lightweight cardboard around the house. You're going to need some scissors. You probably are going to want a Sharpie at some point. You're going to need some red feathers, and then some red yarn. Now, if you don't have red yarn, but you have some other red things like yarn around the house, you can use that. Maybe you might want to use some red raffia. Maybe you want some red strips of fabric. And maybe you want to use red embroidery thread. Or maybe you want to use some red pom-pom fringe. Or maybe you want to use 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of those so your bird has lots of textures. And then also you can use a googly eye. That's what we call these, a googly eye. Or you can just make your own eye out of white paper and a black marker using that Sharpie. You're going to start out by making a cardinal on your cardboard and painting it red. And then you're going to paint some long strips of cardboard that you paint black. It's very thin, just about 1/4 of an inch. And we'll make the legs out of that. Then you're also going to need a piece of yellow foam, craft foam, for the beak, and a piece of black foam for the mask on the cardinal's face. You could also use construction paper, or maybe you just use white paper and you color a little square black and a little square yellow, and you glue that on. And then you can also use a hot glue gun. Your adult, your big person, wants to help with. Or if you want, you can use glue that comes in a bottle, like Elmer's school glue. Okay, boys and girls, those are the supplies we need. Let's get started making our cardinal. Now it's time to make our cardinal, but before we can make our cardinal, we have to draw it. So we're going to do something that's called guided drawing. You know, all an animal or a bird is really just a few shapes that have been connected, and then a line drawing, kind of smoothing out those connections of those shapes. To help you understand, I have drawn the lines on this cardinal. You see an oval for its body, you see a long rectangle for the tail, and a short, wider rectangle for the neck. Now you see a little point up here and a little point here, and we will draw those on. So first, let me show you how to draw your cardinal. And I'm going to hold this up to the camera just so you can see it as I do it. So the first thing I would do is I would draw an oval. There's my oval. Now the next thing I would do is I would draw a rectangle coming off the tail and a wider rectangle for the head. So now you see all I've drawn is an oval, a long skinny rectangle, and a short wider rectangle. Now the fun part comes when I connect these. So I can just draw a curved line right there that connects that. I can draw a smooth curved line that connects the bottom of the head. See, I just drew this line and I just drew this line. So now it's a smooth line. Now I'm going to do the same thing here and the same thing here. So I'm going to smooth out that tail. I'm going to smooth out the neck. Now you see I smoothed out the oval and the rectangle together and the oval and the smaller rectangle together. Now I'm going to draw a point on the tail and a point up here on the head, because cardinals have a point on the top of their head. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to come down here and just draw a point. Now I have my cardinal's body, and now it's time to cut it out. Now cutting cardboard can be a little difficult. You might need to get your big person to help do this, an older friend or family member. I've been cutting for cardboard for a long time and it's a little easier for me, but one tip, if you set the edge of your scissors on the table when you push down, the table's harder than your hand and it gives you some push on the cut, so it's not as hard on your hands to cut it out. And then you end up with this, the cardinal. Some other supplies that you're going to need is some red acrylic paint, but you could also use tempera paint. You could even use a red marker to color the cardboard. You'll need some black paint to paint the legs. You'll need a paintbrush. I just use a styrofoam plate to squirt my paint out on, and you'll need a cup of water and some paper towel. Now, the easiest thing to do would be lay your bird right on this plate. Just squirt a little bit of red paint on it. It doesn't take much. A little bit of paint goes a long, long ways. So I've got my bird painted, and then I pre-painted my little black strips of cardboard. They're just skinny little strips of cardboard, and I pre-painted them black with the same kind of paint. I used acrylic paint in black. Now I'm going to set that off to the side to dry because I actually already have one painted for what we're going to do next, and it's dry. I'm going to put my paintbrush in water. You never want to leave a paintbrush with acrylic paint sitting out because that paint dries so quickly. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to wrap our bird with the red yarn. So I have a scrap of yarn here that was left over from another project. I'm just going to tie it in a knot around my bird's neck just to get it started. So you can see I just tied a knot, almost like I was putting a collar, on my bird. And I'm going to trim this little piece sticking out. Okay, now it's as easy as wrapping back and forth, and you can go across, just pull it tight, and you can come back. I'm pulling it tight and I'm wrapping it, and you can fill in the holes, and it doesn't have to be totally covered, or it can be totally covered, or maybe you just cover a little bit of it. That is actually up to you. Now I think it looks best if you wrap as much of the head as you can. I think it really helps. And I think it also helps if you wrap as much of the tail as you can. So I'm covering my whole bird with this yarn. And I want to come back to the middle to tie it off because I just don't want that tie off on a corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift a little piece of yarn, and I know how to tie a knot, so I'm going to tie a knot. If you don't know how to tie a knot, get your big person to help you. Maybe you're a family member or a friend or an older brother or sister, and it's tied. But let me show you something else you could do. If you're not very good at tying, you could take a tiny little piece of masking tape and you could put it over that if you want. And then if you really wanted to be smart so you don't see the masking tape, you could take a little bit of that red paint, cover it up, and it won't even be noticed when your bird is done. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, I'm laying this here because I don't want to get red paint on my tablecloth. We're going to take our bird and we're going to measure out some legs, about how long we think they should be. And I think that's up to you, but I'm going to make mine about 2.5 inches. And I'm going to glue one on the front of my bird and on the back of my bird. That way it looks like there's a leg on each side of my bird's body. And I'm just going to use my hot glue gun for that. But again, you can use Elmer's glue if you prefer, white school glue, or you can have a big person help you with this. But I put the glue on about 1/2 inch. Now on the one that goes on the back, I have to put the glue on the front because I want to make sure that I glue it with the paint facing forward. So now I have my bird with legs on the front and the back. Now, Cardinals wear something that I'll call a mask. And this mask covers the top of their face up here. Now, the easiest way to make a mask is, it's about the same size. Do you see? It's about the exact same size as my face. So I'm just going to round off the corners on one side. So now it kind of looks like a capital D, as in dog, but the middle is not cut out. And then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to make a little curved line. So now it looks like my capital D has a curved line inside it. And now I'm going to just, almost like I'm making a heart, but I'm not finishing it. I'm just going to curve those lines in. In a way, it looks like a molar tooth in your mouth without the root. Now I'm going to glue this on the face of my bird, and maybe I decided it's a little too big, so I'm going to cut a little edge off. And I'm going to glue it right up to the edge of my bird. And I'm going to use my hot glue to do that. Again, hot glue is not for children to use. You need a big person to help you with that. And then I'm going to take my yellow and I'm just going to cut it in a V like that. It almost looks like a house. And now I'm going to, the part of the house that would be on the ground, I'm going to cut it in an oval like that. Now it looks like I have a house with a curved bottom, and I can put that right here on my bird's face. So I'm going to come down here and put a little bit of glue right on the edge of my beak. And I'm going to set it right there. While that's drying, I'm going to put a feather here for the wing, and I'm going to put a feather up here on the head. But these feathers are too long, so I'm just going to cut the top off. Just a little bit of glue on my feather. I'm going to tuck it in right there underneath that beak. And now I'm going to put a little bit right here so that I can stick my wing on, so that I can stick the eye on. Here is my cardinal.